Today we're getting into the second Precon video upgrade with the Peace Offering deck, and we're going to get into the world of Group Hug decks, or more appropriately here, Group Slug, because these kind of decks come in one of two varieties. The Hug version is usually you don't run much, if any, win cons. You just kind of sit back and play Kingmaker with the entire board and kind of mess with people. Or you play the Slug version where you actually have win cons built in. You feed people cards, you make them feel like, oh yeah, you're powering me up, go ahead and keep feeding me that stuff, and then you kick their butt with something. So this deck is built more like that straight out of the box. Let's see what we can do to make this a little more huggy than sluggy in today's video. So to start, let's take a look at the two commanders. Now, one is more of a group hug commander than the other one. First up is Ms. Bumbleflower. For one, a green, a white, and a blue. It's a rabbit citizen with vigilance. It's 1/5, and whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card, put a counter on target creature. It gains flying until end of turn, and then if it's the second time this ability has resolved, you draw 2 cards. Or the alternate commander that comes with the deck is Mr. Foxglove. For 2, a green, a white, and a blue, you get a Fox Rogue with lifelink. It's a 3/5 that says whenever it attacks, draw cards equal to the number of cards in defending player's hand minus the number of cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That is a very complicated way to say is if you have the same amount of cards in hand as the person you're attacking, you don't get to draw, but you get to put something for free out of your hand. The two legends are very different in their goals with the deck. Ms. Bumbleflower asks you to allow an opponent to draw a spell for every cast you make, but rewards you for doing so, pumping up creatures, netting you more cards as you get to chain multiple spells. And you can choose to either buff up your own creatures, or you can even put counters on stuff on your opponent's side of the board to kind of play the Kingmaker. This makes her a commander where you can strike deals and play around with the game if that appeals to you. On the other side, we have Mr. Foxglove. He doesn't care about giving opponents cards itself, but instead leverages all the extra cards that you can give them to give us extra draws or those free casts that I was talking about. And I'm just not really interested in that kind of deck right now. I might try building around Mr. Foxglove in the future, but for now, let's focus on Ms. Bumbleflower for this upgrade. So with that said, what can we do with this deck? Well, my main goal here is to make the deck a little more hug and a lot less slug. So let's first off start off by removing a card that comes from a cycle I dislike, and I usually cut them out of every one of my Precon upgrade videos, and that is Martial Impetus. I've said it before, and I will say it again. The Impetus cycle sucks outside of Ghoulish Impetus, and it only works on that card because it comes back when the creature it's attached to dies. Martial Impetus does not do that, and I'm not a fan of that fact. Instead, I'm going to run Edric, Spymaster of Trest. For 1, a green and a blue, it's an elf rogue that says whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card, and it's a 2/2. The idea behind the Impetus cards is to deter your opponents from attacking you with their best creature most of the time. Once in a great while, you'll have a fringe case where you want to force a creature that they don't want to attack with into attacking, and it can be blocked at that point. But for the most part, Edric deters them from attacking you if they want those cards. So this accomplishes my goal of making the deck a little more group hug while still keeping the deterrence in place. Our second cut is a card that has nothing to do with the group hug deck and everything to do with slugging an opponent, and that is Mana Gorger Hydra. Now, I understand the reasoning for it. If you want an eventual threat that will grow as we feed more and more cards to our opponents and they start casting spells, this is one of those things you could do. But that's not my plan for what I want to do with the deck, and I want room for a card from the main set. So instead, I'm going to slot in Kidnap for 2 blue. It's an aura that says gift a card, enchant creature. When Kidnap enters, tap enchanted creature. If the gift was not promised, put 3 stun counters on it, and you control the enchanted creature. So you have some options here. You can either grab something and pin it down if you don't really need to attack with it, and you just, keep it on your side until later. Or you can just give somebody a card and steal their absolute best creature, and that includes their commanders. So this is also kind of a way to pin down a commander because you're going to take it from them and hold it on your side hostage. This might cause some salt in some play groups since it is a theft card, but they might be okay with it since you're going to be giving them a gift or a card usually, because you really want to be able to untap and do stuff with that card. This also gives us another gift spell to get extra cards off the Jelly Gerbils that comes in the Precon. Number 3 on the cut list is going to be Simic Ascendancy. Now, group hug decks that have a slug element to them or a hidden win con usually like to use some kind of alternate win con that they can just spring out and win, and one of them is Simic Ascendancy in this deck. But the one thing about Simic Ascendancy, it is obvious what's coming if it's not dealt with, making it a prime target for removal. And I've never seen anyone win a game of Commander using this card. It just draws fire far too often. So instead, I want to employ a more of a kill them with kindness style enchantment with Forced Fruition. For 4 blue enchantment, Whenever an opponent casts a spell, they draw 7 cards. Now, this thing is a rattlesnake in disguise, and it really is not that kind. Every spell an opponent casts out, this will draw them 7 cards. Now, why that may sound like pure insanity to some people, an opponent that is greedy and drunk on a power trip could really mess themselves up because they might end up decking themselves trying to go off. And for the most part, that is pretty unassuming. You're going to give them the 7 cards by cast. Why would they get rid of that? Well, never underestimate how fast this thing can deck a player that is not paying attention. Now, in order to get a new spell from the main set in that I want to, something else needs to go, and that card is going to be Broken Wings from the Precon. It's an alright card, but it's nothing spectacular. What I really want is a mass removal spell that has upside just in case all the hugging kind of gets out of control, and that's where Starfall Invocation comes in. For 3 white, it's a sorcery with gift a card. Destroy all creatures if the gift was promised. Return a creature card put into a graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. So for the cost of a card to whatever opponent is the least threatening, you can reset the board and then get to keep your best creature around. Probably Ms. Bumbleflower, but maybe something else. And then our next cut is going to be one of the alternate win cons in Triskaidekaphile. I have never seen this one work out because it either gets removed before it can do its thing, or it comes down and the player just doesn't get to the 13 cards to win. So instead, we're going to slot in a different 4-drop with Tempt with Reflections, 3 and a blue sorcery. Tempting offer, choose target creature you control, create a token copy of that creature. Each opponent may create a token that's a copy of the creature. For each opponent who does, you get an additional copy of that creature. There's plenty of creatures in this deck where a clone of it would be great to have. And for a group hook deck, Tempt Reflections is one of my all-time favorite ones to use, since it can also gift a copy to an opponent if they let you have more of whatever you're copying. Next up is a straight upgrade opportunity with Baird, Steward of Argive coming out of the deck. It's a fine card, but we can do much better with Collective Restraint. For 3 and a blue, it's an enchantment with Domain. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays X for each creature they control that's attacking you, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. This card, much to my surprise, has actually steadily risen in price over the last couple of months, nearly tripling in price since May, but it is a very powerful and a great upgrade over Baird, since we're more concerned with keeping opponents from attacking us while we do our slow burn plan. Then my next decision to take out of the deck is Perplexing Test. This card can get the board to kind of look at you sideways for fueling their fun and then bouncing all of it back to their hands. And that's not what we're after. We're trying to lie low while they beat up on each other and then finish off the survivors. So instead, we're going to play a card that seems innocent but can add more fuel to the fire with Heartwood Storyteller. For 1 green, it's a Treefolk. It says whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, each of the player's opponents draws a card. So it's a 2/3. And this thing, if you really want a game to go fast, this can do it, since every non-creature spell cast by a player gives a card to everyone else in the game. And we're already doing that kind of thing with Ms. Bumbleflower, but this way every opponent is going to get a card when you cast a non-creature spell, not just one player at a time. And then you will get cards when one of the other players casts their non-creature stuff. So all in all, you're going to get a little more benefit out of this, and I like this card a little bit better. Now, the next card I want to remove from the Precon is a 1-shot card draw creature ETB off of Sphinx of Enlightenment. It enters, you get 3, and each of your opponents gets 1, but that's it. We're not running a bunch of flicker effects. We're not reanimating it. We're not bouncing and replaying it. So you're not going to get more than that 1 shot off of it. And on top of that, it's going to draw some fire, and you're likely paying 6 for 3 cards and not much else. It's kind of eh. So instead, we're going to go with a creature that can actually net you more cards over the course of a game with a lower initial investment, and it's not going to likely get killed outright, since it helps the opponents as well over time. And that is Glunch the Bestower. For 1, a green and a white, it's a jellyfish with flying 0/5. And at the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature they control. Choose a second player to draw a card, and choose a third player to create 2 treasure tokens. This one comes right out of my 4-color group hug deck that I did back around Christmas of 2022, and it's a fun card in this kind of deck. You give them goodies, you can get goodies, and it just makes for a great political toy. You can be like, oh, you need that creature bigger so it doesn't die when that opponent's going to come try to kill you next turn? I'll give it counters as long as you promise not to hit me with the things next turn. You need mana to do something because you're mana screwed? Okay, I'll give you treasures as long as you don't take me out with whatever you're trying to do. There's a lot of possibilities with this card, and I love it in a group hug deck. So our next to last cut is going to be Riot Control. There's already a fair bit of fog effects in the deck, as well as a combat redirect in Illusionist Gambit. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this one out instead and use a card that can be used to remove a serious threat, or it can be used in comical fashion, and that is Fractured Identity. 3 white and a blue for a sorcery that says exile target non-land permanent. Each player other than its controller creates a token that's a copy of it. So like I said, you can exile something that's threatening and give you and the other 2 players a copy in the pod, or you can do something super funny and exile one of your own things like a copy of Forced Fruition or a Heartwood Storyteller to watch the cards fly around the board. Then the last change I'm going to make to this deck outside of the mana base is I'm going to be removing Realm Cloaked Giant. We don't want to be running board wipes that just don't do something else going on, because blowing up our own board is not conducive to us trying to control the game and be the kingmaker. So instead, I want to have one last spell that can benefit our opponents, but us as well, with Alliance of Arms. For a white, it's a sorcery with Join Forces. Starting with you, each player may pay any amount of mana. Each player creates X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, where X is the amount of mana paid this way. Oftentimes, you may be the only one paying into this to get tokens because they don't want you getting extra benefit off of it, but you can also use it as a political play where you promise to do something for a player if they help chip in some extra mana for it at the time of casting. So that's what I have for the Peace Offering Precon. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you like what I did here? Do you not like it? Do you think there should be some other stuff? Did I forget to put something in? Let us know down below. And while you're down there, please like, comment, subscribe. All those things help the channel grow. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.